I'm quitting my job. My sister said it casually, like she was announcing she'd switched coffee brands. We were sitting in my parents' living room, the same one where every serious family decision had always been presented, never discussed. My mom was on the couch, nodding slowly. My dad stood near the window, arms crossed, watching my reaction instead of her. I just can't do it anymore, my sister continued. The stress, the environment. I need time to figure things out. I waited. Then she looked directly at me and added, You'll take care of us while I do. Not can you. Not would you. You will. The room stayed quiet, like everyone was waiting for me to accept something that had already been decided. I forced a small smile. What do you mean by take care of you? She blinked, like the question surprised her. I mean, financially. Just for a bit. You're stable. You've always been good with money. My mom chimed in softly, family helps family. There it was. That sentence had been used on me my entire life. Whenever someone else made a decision that affected me, whenever I was expected to stretch, sacrifice, adjust. My sister leaned back, relieved. Exactly. It's not like it'll be forever. It never was. In theory. In practice, it always lasted until I finally broke. I glanced at my dad. He didn't say a word. He just watched me closely, like he was measuring resistance. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't a conversation. It was a rollout. They weren't asking for help. They were assigning responsibility. I took a slow breath. Have you already quit? My sister nodded. I gave notice last week. My stomach dropped. So this wasn't even hypothetical, I said calmly. She waved a hand. I knew you'd understand. Understand. I'd been understanding my whole life. Understanding when she needed help with rent. Understanding when her husband was between jobs. Understanding when emergencies kept happening back to back, always on my dime. I had a good job. No kids. No dramatic lifestyle. To them, that meant I had extra. What about your husband? I asked. She shrugged. He'll figure something out eventually. Eventually. That word carried a lot of weight when it wasn't your bills piling up. My mom leaned forward. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. She's overwhelmed. I nodded slowly. I hear that. And you're not, my sister added quickly. You're strong. You always land on your feet. That wasn't a compliment. That was justification. I looked around the room and saw it clearly. My sister's decision. My parents' approval. My responsibility. All neatly packaged. I need time to think, I said finally. My sister frowned. Think? About what? About whether I wanted to keep funding choices I didn't make. I didn't realize this was already decided, I said evenly. My mom sighed. We raised you better than this. That one stung. Because it wasn't about values. It was about obedience. I'll let you know, I said, standing up. My sister laughed nervously. You're overthinking it. No. For the first time, I was thinking clearly. As I walked out, I heard my mom say, She'll come around. They all believed that, because I always had. But driving home that night, something felt different. Not anger. Awareness. I replayed the conversation in my head, the assumptions, the lack of consent, the way my stability had been turned into an obligation. This wasn't support. It was expectation. And expectation, when unspoken and unquestioned, turns into entitlement. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to say yes the way they expected me to. Not this time. That night, I barely slept. Not because I felt guilty, but because my mind wouldn't stop replaying patterns I'd ignored for years. It was like someone had finally turned on the lights in a room I'd been navigating in the dark. This wasn't new. The only new thing was how openly they'd said it out loud. The next morning, I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank statements. Not because I needed reassurance, but because I needed facts. Numbers didn't lie. They didn't guilt trip. They didn't soften reality. I scrolled back months, years, rent transfers, grocery loans that were never repaid, emergency payments that somehow became routine, school supplies for kids that weren't mine, car repairs, utilities, phone bills. I'd never tracked it before. I didn't want to seem petty. I told myself it was temporary help. It never was. By noon, I had a rough total. It made my chest tighten. I closed the laptop and went for a walk, letting the cold air steady me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was clear. That afternoon, my sister texted me. "So when do you want to talk details?" Details. Like timelines, budgets, terms. As if I'd already agreed. I didn't respond. An hour later, my mom called. "I hope you're not holding this against her," she said, skipping any greeting. "She's fragile right now." Fragile. That word was always reserved for my sister. I was never fragile. I was capable. "I'm not holding anything against her," I said calmly. "I'm just processing." "Well, don't take too long," my mom replied. "She needs reassurance." I almost laughed. Who reassured me when I was the one absorbing everyone else's risk? That evening, I sat at my kitchen table and opened a notebook. I wrote down everything I wanted to say, but hadn't. You don't get to volunteer my income. Support is offered, not assigned. Your crisis doesn't override my autonomy. Writing it felt grounding. The next day, my dad stopped by unannounced. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. "Your mom's worried." "I'm sure she is," I replied. He sighed. "You know how your sister is." "Yes," I said. "I do. She's always needed more help," he continued. "You've always been the steady one." There it was again. The role. "I didn't apply for it," I said quietly. He frowned. "This isn't the time to make a point." "This is exactly the time," I replied. He shifted uncomfortably. "You don't want to cause tension." I looked at him steadily. "I'm not causing it. I'm refusing to absorb it." He didn't know what to say to that. After he left, I realized something important. No one had asked how much support would mean. No one had discussed limits. Because limits threatened the assumption. That night, my sister sent another message. "I already told the kids auntie's helping us." My stomach dropped. That was deliberate. She'd created emotional leverage before I'd consented. I typed slowly. "Please don't promise my support to anyone. We haven't agreed on anything." Her response came instantly. "Wow. I didn't think you'd be like this." There it was. The shift from assumption to accusation. I didn't reply. Instead, I decided something. If I was going to say no, or yes, it would be informed, intentional, and final. Not emotional. Not reactive. Prepared. I emailed my financial advisor the next morning. Then my therapist. Then my lawyer. Not because I planned to cut anyone off, but because I planned to stop being cornered. By the end of the week, I had clarity. And clarity, I was learning, was the most threatening thing in a family built on expectation. Clarity has a strange effect on relationships. Once you see patterns clearly, you can't unsee them, and people who benefit from those patterns feel it immediately. By the weekend, the tone shifted. My sister stopped asking when we'd talk and started asking why I was making things complicated. My mom framed every conversation like an emergency. My dad stayed quiet, which somehow carried more weight than words. I noticed something else too. No one asked what this would cost me. Not financially, emotionally. That Sunday, my sister called instead of texting. "I don't understand why you're acting like this," she said. "I thought you'd be happy to help." Happy. The word caught me off guard. "I help because I choose to," I said evenly. "Not because I'm expected to." She scoffed. "This is what family does." "No," I replied. "This is what you're used to me doing." Silence. Then she changed tactics. "You don't know how hard this has been for me," she said, voice softer. "I'm exhausted. I just need time." "I hear that," I said, "but your need for time doesn't obligate my income." She exhaled sharply. "So you're just going to let us struggle?" There it was. The emotional trap. "I'm not responsible for decisions I didn't make," I replied. Her voice hardened. "I knew you'd throw that in my face." I didn't raise my voice. "This isn't about blame. It's about boundaries." She hung up. That night, I thought about how often I'd been framed as the villain simply for not rescuing someone from the consequences of their own choices. It was always easier to accuse me than to self-reflect. The next day, my mom called again. "I raised you to be generous," she said. "You raised me to be responsible," I replied. "Those aren't the same thing." "She's your sister," my mom insisted. "And I'm your daughter," I said quietly. "Why does her comfort matter more than my stability?" She didn't answer. Instead, she said, "You've changed." "Yes," I said. "I've stopped disappearing." Later that afternoon, my sister posted on social media. A vague post, carefully worded. Some people forget where they come from once they get comfortable. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I closed the app. I wasn't going to defend myself in a public forum designed for performance. That evening, I sat down and prepared. Not arguments, facts. I printed out numbers, past transfers, dates, totals. Not to shame her, but to ground myself. When emotions run high, facts anchor truth. I texted my sister. "Let's meet tomorrow. All of us. I want to talk openly." She replied immediately. "Good. This needs to be settled." Yes, it did. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Because no matter how the conversation went, I knew something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't trying to convince anyone anymore. I was ready to state my position. Clearly, calmly, and without apology. We met at my parents' house the next evening. Same living room. Same couch. Same unspoken hierarchy. My sister sat with her arms crossed, jaw tight. My mom hovered near the kitchen doorway, pretending to tidy up. My dad took his usual spot by the window, watching everything without participating. I sat down last. Not because I was late, but because I wanted to arrive grounded. "Okay," my sister said, breaking the silence. "Let's just talk like adults." I nodded. "That's what I want too." She launched in immediately. "I don't know why this turned into such a big deal. I needed support. You've helped before." "Yes," I said calmly. "And that's exactly why this is a big deal." She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means temporary help became a permanent expectation," I replied. "And this time, the decision was made without me." My mom sighed loudly. "You're focusing on the wrong thing." "No," I said, meeting her eyes. "I'm focusing on the pattern." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I hadn't planned on using it, but I'd brought it for myself. I went through my records, I continued. Over the past 3 years, I've covered rent, utilities, groceries, car repairs, and school expenses. Repeatedly. My sister scoffed. Are you seriously keeping score? I'm keeping reality, I replied. My dad shifted uncomfortably. I never complained, I said. I never asked for repayment. But what I won't accept is being assigned responsibility without consent. My sister's voice rose. So what, you're punishing me for trusting you? No, I said evenly. I'm correcting a dynamic. My mom stepped in. This is cold. Families don't operate on spreadsheets. Families also don't operate on silence, I replied. That stopped her. I turned back to my sister. You quit your job before asking me. You told your children I'd support you. That wasn't trust. That was pressure. Her eyes flashed. I was desperate. And I was cornered, I said. The room went quiet. I took a breath. I want to be clear. I'm not your backup plan. I'm your sister. She laughed bitterly. So what, you're just saying no? I'm saying this, I replied. I won't be providing ongoing financial support. Not now. Not later. My mom gasped softly. But, I continued, I will help you find resources, budget planning, job leads, temporary assistance, support that doesn't make me responsible for your household. My sister stared at me. So you'll help, but not help. I'll help without enabling, I said. She stood up abruptly. I can't believe you. I know, I replied quietly. You never expected me to stop. My dad finally spoke. This is going to hurt relationships. I looked at him. So did the expectation that mine wouldn't matter. No one had an answer to that. After a long pause, my sister grabbed her coat. Don't expect me to forget this. I don't, I said. She left without looking back. My mom followed her to the door, then turned on me. I hope you're proud. I am, I said honestly. For the first time in a long time. That night, driving home, my hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from release. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't apologized. I hadn't folded. And the world hadn't ended. It had simply shifted. For the first time, the responsibility I'd been carrying didn't feel automatic. It felt optional. The days after that meeting were strangely quiet. No frantic calls. No guilt-heavy messages. No emergency crises that required immediate fixing. At first, the silence made me uneasy. I'd been conditioned to expect backlash, tears, accusations, sudden disasters designed to pull me back into line. None came. Instead, there was distance. My sister blocked me on social media. My mom stopped calling altogether. My dad sent a short text. Hope you're okay. I was. More than okay. I noticed it in small ways. I slept through the night. I stopped checking my phone compulsively. I went grocery shopping without mentally calculating how much extra I might need to send someone later. For the first time, my money felt like mine. A week later, my sister reached out. Not with an apology. With an update. We're figuring things out, she wrote. It's been hard. I stared at the message for a long time. In the past, that line would have cracked me open. I would have offered help immediately. Money, solutions, reassurance. This time, I responded carefully. I hope things stabilize soon. Let me know if you want help looking for resources. She didn't reply. And that was okay. Another week passed. Then another. I ran into my mom at the grocery store one afternoon. She looked thinner, tired. She paused when she saw me, like she wasn't sure whether to approach. "Hi," I said first. "Hi," she replied quietly. We stood there between the produce aisle and the frozen foods. "You really hurt your sister," she said finally. I met her gaze. I stopped hurting myself. She looked away. "You've always been the reliable one," she murmured. "I'm still reliable," I said. "Just not exploitable." That word made her flinch. "You don't have to be so harsh," she said. "I do," I replied, because soft boundaries were never respected. She didn't argue. We parted awkwardly, without resolution, but without hostility. That night, I thought about how often responsibility is mistaken for virtue. How being the strong one becomes a trap when no one asks what strength costs. A few days later, my sister called. Her voice sounded different, quieter. "I got a part-time job," she said. "That's good," I replied genuinely. "And we're downsizing," she added. "It's not ideal." "I know," I said. She hesitated. "Mom's upset." I expected that. Another pause. Then she said something I hadn't expected. "I didn't realize how much you'd been helping before." I stayed quiet. I thought, because you never complained, it wasn't a big deal. There it was. The truth I'd lived with for years. "I didn't complain because I didn't feel allowed to," I said calmly. She sighed. "I guess I took that for granted." I didn't rush to reassure her. "I'm not angry," I said. "But I'm not going back." She didn't ask me to. After we hung up, I sat in my living room and felt something settle into place. Respect. Not from her, not fully yet, but from myself. I had chosen discomfort over resentment, and that choice was already paying dividends. A few months passed. Life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became quieter, more intentional. I stopped bracing myself for emergencies that weren't mine to solve. My sister kept her part-time job. Her husband found work again. They adjusted. Not gracefully, but honestly. And something unexpected happened. They stopped treating me like a safety net. At a family gathering later that year, the dynamic felt different. My sister spoke carefully around me, like she was relearning how to relate to me without assumption. My mom stayed polite but distant. My dad asked me about my life for the first time in years. "What have you been up to?" he asked. I smiled. "Living." That answer felt earned. Later that night, as I drove home, I realized how much space had opened up in my life, space that had been occupied by obligation, guilt, and unspoken contracts I never signed. I filled that space with things I'd postponed. I took a trip I'd always talked myself out of. I enrolled in a course I'd wanted for years. I started saving without the fear that someone else's crisis would wipe it out. But the biggest change wasn't external. It was internal. I no longer flinched when my phone buzzed. One evening, my sister called again. "I just wanted to say, thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not rescuing me," she admitted. "I hated it at first, but I needed to figure things out on my own." I didn't say, "I told you so." I didn't say anything at all for a moment. Then I said, "I'm glad you're okay." After we hung up, I sat in silence, thinking about how often love is confused with sacrifice, and how often sacrifice is demanded from the same person over and over. Being generous doesn't mean being available for exploitation. Being strong doesn't mean being silent. And family doesn't mean forfeiting yourself. I learned that boundaries don't destroy relationships. They reveal which ones were built on access instead of respect. Some relationships didn't survive that revelation. Others adapted. And some, like my relationship with myself, finally began. I don't regret saying no. I regret how long it took me to learn that I was allowed to.